Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. I thought I had found everything I ever wanted. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to be perfect. We met at work, and our connection was immediate. I was captivated by his stories, his kindness, and the way he made me feel like I was the center of his world. There was no mention of family. He said they were all gone, that he had no one. It didn't bother me at first. I was just so in love. After a few months, we moved in together, and everything seemed perfect. But something didn't feel right. There was a part of his life I couldn't get into, a side of him that was hidden. I had no idea what was coming. Things started off so smoothly. But after living together for some time, I began noticing little things that didn't add up. There were strange calls he'd take in private, conversations that seemed to end too quickly when I walked into the room. He always brushed it off, saying it was work or some old acquaintance. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. I started asking questions, gently probing into his past, but he always said the same thing. I have no family. They're all gone. It made sense, or so I thought. Who could argue with that? One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I overheard him talking on the phone in another room. He sounded different, tense, defensive. The conversation was short, and when he hung up, his face was pale. Who was that? I asked, casually, trying not to seem too intrusive. He hesitated for a moment, then smiled, a little too quickly. Just an old friend, he said. But the way he avoided eye contact told me there was more to the story. I decided to let it go, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. A few weeks later, I came across an envelope hidden in his drawer. It wasn't like him to keep things from me, so my curiosity got the best of me. The envelope was addressed to him, but it was from a law firm. My heart started racing as I opened it. It was an alimony payment statement. Confused, I tried to make sense of it. The payment was substantial, and it was clear this woman was someone significant to him. But the name on the document didn't ring a bell. I couldn't stop myself from wondering. Who was she? I confronted him that evening, holding the envelope in my hands. Who is she? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He froze. His face turned an unnatural shade of red. What's this about? He asked, trying to deflect. But I wasn't letting go this time. I found this, I said, showing him the statement. He sighed deeply, as if deciding how much to reveal. She's someone from my past, he said, his voice low. But there was something in his eyes, a fear that I hadn't seen before. He wasn't telling me everything. Days passed, and I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope. I did some research, trying to figure out who this woman was. The more I dug, the more I realized he wasn't being entirely honest with me. I found her name, Rebecca, and she had a history with him. But it didn't make sense. He had told me repeatedly that he had no family. So why was he paying alimony to a woman he claimed he had no ties to? My mind raced. Was he lying to me? And if so, why? It was one late night when the truth finally came out. We were sitting on the couch, talking about something trivial when I asked him again, why are you paying alimony to someone you've never divorced? He paused for a long time, avoiding my gaze. Finally, he blurted out, I was married before. I didn't want you to know. My heart stopped. He had been married? You never told me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, regret in his eyes. I didn't think it mattered. I thought I could move on without telling you. I didn't want you to think less of me. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I was the second wife, but not legally. I was just the woman he had chosen to be with after his first marriage fell apart. I asked him why he hadn't mentioned it sooner, why he had hidden this huge part of his life from me. His answer was weak, full of excuses. I didn't want you to feel like you were second choice, he said. But now it felt like I had been nothing but a second choice, a convenient option after the real relationship had ended. And worse, I didn't even know about it. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Heartbreak? Everything was crashing down around me. How could he hide something so important? How could he lie to me like that, making me believe I was the first and only woman in his life? The more I thought about it, the more the alimony payments made sense. Rebecca was his past, the woman he had never truly divorced. And I was left in the shadows, a wife who didn't even know the truth. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I demanded to know everything. Why was he still paying Rebecca alimony? Was their divorce ever finalized? He looked at me, his face filled with guilt, and said, I wasn't able to divorce her completely. It was complicated. I thought I had moved on, but she kept dragging me back into her life. His words didn't comfort me. In fact, They made everything worse. He had been paying her to keep her quiet, to maintain the illusion of a marriage that didn't exist. And here I was, the second wife, caught in the middle of their unfinished business. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I took matters into my own hands. I started investigating Rebecca, trying to find out more about her and her connection to him. The more I uncovered, the more questions I had. She wasn't just an ex-wife. She was still very much involved in his life, even after all these years. I found out that she had been calling him regularly, sending him messages, and even showing up unannounced at our apartment on a few occasions. Each time, he had brushed it off as just needing closure, but now, it felt like a constant reminder that I wasn't his first priority. One afternoon, I decided I had enough. I confronted Rebecca, wanting answers directly from her. She was calm and collected when I asked her about their past. "He never really let go," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of bitterness. "He thought he could move on, but he was still tied to me. I didn't want to make it harder for him, so I let him pay the alimony. But now, well, it's obvious he's found someone else." The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. She knew. She had always known. But she wasn't the only one keeping secrets. As I walked away from Rebecca's apartment, a sense of numbness washed over me. I couldn't stop replaying everything she had said in my mind. It dawned on me that this whole time, he had been stringing me along. The alimony payments weren't just financial support. They were an emotional tether that kept him linked to his past, to her. I was just a placeholder, a distraction. And now, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever truly be the woman he wanted. That night, I sat in silence, staring at the empty space beside me on the couch. He came home late, his eyes avoiding mine. "How did it go?" he asked, but I could hear the tension in his voice. He knew what I had learned. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold. The conversation was painful. He admitted that he had never fully let go of Rebecca, that the alimony was just one of the ways he had tried to maintain some semblance of connection to her. "I thought I could move on with you," he said, his voice breaking, "but I never really did." I didn't know how to process what he had said. He had admitted to using me as a means to move on from a life he hadn't fully closed the door on. All the love, all the moments I had cherished with him, felt like lies now. I realized I had been second choice all along, his second wife, in every sense of the word. I couldn't trust him anymore. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I could ever trust anyone again. My heart was shattered, and I was left trying to pick up the pieces. As days passed, I found myself questioning everything about our relationship. Could I forgive him? Could I stay with someone who had lied to me so completely? The trust we had built was gone, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in the shadow of someone else. I knew I had to make a choice. Either confront my feelings and try to move forward, or walk away and never look back. I needed space to think, and I asked him to leave for a while so I could clear my mind. I didn't know what the future held, but I couldn't keep living in this broken reality. The days without him felt strange. I had never spent time alone in this house, not since we had moved in together. It was quiet, too quiet. I found myself looking through old pictures of us, remembering the good times we had shared. But those memories now felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. I was trying to figure out who I was without him. Was I still the woman who loved him? Or had I become someone else, someone stronger, someone who knew better than to settle for half-truths? It didn't take long for me to realize that the situation was more complicated than I had thought. The longer we stayed apart, the more I uncovered about his finances, his past, and his relationship with Rebecca. I found out that he had never really separated from her legally. He was still married. Their divorce papers had never been filed, and they were still technically husband and wife. I was stunned. I had been living with a man who had never fully committed to me, and who had a legal tie to someone else. I had been nothing more than a placeholder in his life. I called him one last time, this time in a final attempt to find closure. He came over, but this time, there was no pretense, no charming words. I asked him to leave for good, and I told him I couldn't continue this relationship. The man I had fallen in love with was a stranger now, and the woman he had never fully divorced was a ghost haunting our life together. As he packed his things, he apologized, but it was too late. The damage was done. I had been deceived, and I could never trust him again. In the weeks that followed, I struggled with the aftermath. I had so many questions, so many what-ifs. But the one thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't continue living a lie. I had given him everything, my trust, my heart, my future. and he had taken it all and kept me in the dark. It was time to rebuild my life, to find a way to move on from this heartbreak. But it wouldn't be easy. The scars were deep, and the trust was shattered. In the months that followed, I started to heal, slowly but surely. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I started focusing on myself, rediscovering the things I loved before I met him, writing, traveling, spending time with friends who had always supported me. I realized that I had allowed myself to be blinded by love, to ignore the signs that something wasn't right. But now, I was no longer that woman. I was stronger, wiser, and more aware of my own worth. It was time to put myself first for once. One day, I decided to meet with a lawyer to finalize everything legally. I needed to make sure I was fully free from the mess he had left behind. It was a tough decision, but it was one I had to make. As the lawyer explained my options, I realized that I was reclaiming my independence. I had never felt more in control of my life than in that moment. The legal documents were just the final step in severing the ties that had bound me to a man who had never truly been honest with me. It was a few months later when I ran into him again. I was at a local cafe, enjoying a quiet afternoon when he walked in, looking as though nothing had changed. I felt a rush of emotions: anger, sadness, even relief. He came over, but I could see the regret in his eyes. "How are you?" he asked softly, almost hesitantly. I didn't know what to say at first, but then I realized that I didn't need to explain myself to him anymore. "I'm doing well," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "Better than before." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there with nothing to say. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. I didn't need him in my life anymore. I had spent so much time trying to make it work, but now I realized that I had been searching for love in the wrong places. It wasn't about finding someone else to fill the void. It was about filling that void myself. I had everything I needed within me. I didn't need his approval, his love, or his lies. I just needed to love myself. I decided to move to a new city. It was a fresh start, a way to leave the past behind and create a future I could be proud of. I found a small apartment and started a new job. Every day felt like a step closer to the woman I wanted to be. I didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt excited about what was to come. I wasn't living in the shadow of my past anymore. I was making my own way. About a year after I had moved, I received an unexpected message. It was from one of his old friends. I heard about everything that happened. The message read, "I just wanted you to know that you weren't the only one he lied to. He's been doing this to everyone. His ex-wife, his family, his friends. You weren't just a second choice, you were a pawn in his game. I'm sorry you had to find out the hard way." I sat there, stunned. It was painful to hear, but it also brought me a sense of peace. I wasn't the only one who had been hurt by him, and I wasn't alone in this anymore. Over the next few months, I worked through the lingering pain of the past. It wasn't an overnight process, but I learned to forgive, not for him, but for myself. Holding on to the anger and resentment was only hurting me. I needed to let go of what had happened in order to make room for the happiness I deserved. Slowly but surely, I was healing. And in the process, I realized just how much stronger I had become. It was a few years later when I saw him again. He was standing outside a restaurant, waiting for someone. I was with friends at the time, and I could feel his eyes on me as I walked past. He called my name, and I stopped, my heart racing. "I'm sorry," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "I messed everything up. I know that now. I wish I could take it all back." I stared at him for a long moment, feeling a mix of emotions. But in the end, I simply nodded and said, "It's too late." And with that, I walked away for the final time. Now, I'm in a much better place. I've built a life for myself, one that's filled with happiness, love, and fulfillment. I've surrounded myself with people who value and respect me, and I've learned to trust again. Trust myself, trust my instincts, and trust that I am enough. The scars from my past will always be there, but they've become a part of who I am. And I'm proud of the woman I've become. I no longer define myself by my past, by him, or by the lies he told. I am free. As I look ahead, I see endless possibilities. I know I'll face challenges, but I'm no longer afraid of them. I've learned that I am stronger than anything life can throw my way. And as for love, I know it will come when the time is right. But for now, I'm focused on my journey. I'm building the life I've always dreamed of, and I'm doing it on my own terms. The past is behind me, and the future is waiting. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you like the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.